welcome back to another episode of Tech Pro Unicorn Podcast. I am your host, Michael Grace, and today I am joined by another Michael Harris. Michael is passionately diverse and has a compelling story about everything from his first entrepreneurial venture at 6 years old, surviving a near-fatal water skiing accident, and how nature shows us how to take quantum leaps in any area we want. He is the author of the #1 best-selling book, Falling Down, Getting Up, that has a foreword by the father of guerrilla marketing, Conrad Levinson. Jay called Michael's ability to survive through thick and thin a true example of using guerrilla-type tactics to overcome virtually anything. He is also a contributing author with Rick Frishman and Wendy Lipton-Dibner of the #1 best-selling book, Expert Success Solutions. It's a compilation of multiple tips and techniques that anyone can apply in their life. And one of his many passions is to help as many people as possible to get their message, their story, and their voice out to the world. Michael, thank you for taking the time and joining us here on the podcast.
Thank you, Michael. It's really great to be here today on your show and to be able to talk about technology and life and entrepreneurship.
Awesome. So, falling down and getting up. Before we just jump in, it's a book that you wrote. I'd love to understand the story a little bit more. Maybe what happened that caused you to want to write a book about it. Maybe a little bit more about your story.
Well, I tell you, Michael, growing up, I suffered a lot of self-esteem issues, not feeling good enough, not feeling that anybody really liked me. I had really great parents. There were times I remember as a kid at 5 years old, I ran away on my tricycle because they were going out on a Saturday night and I didn't want them to go. And
Awesome.
as my life progressed, I had a pretty good life. In 1971, I was junior champion at Portland Golf Club, 12 years old, junior champ, and I beat my friend Bobby Atkinson. And then that's where the story really begins, Michael. We headed down to the coast. I grew up in Oregon and Portland. We'd go down to the Oregon coast all the time, and we were headed down to the coast, and there's a lake that we ski at and water ski at down there. And we went out skiing. I was a little hotshot water skier. I'd go as fast and as hard as I can all the time. So I'm out there and I was going to do a beach landing because that's what I did. So I was coming around. I was getting whipped by the boat faster and faster towards the beach. And I love that stuff. I wanted that adrenaline flow at 12 years old, right? And then all of a sudden, smack, I hit the beach. And I ended up going head over heels. My skis broke and I had the wind knocked out of me. As a kid, at some point, we all get the wind knocked out of us from time to time. But it was like that times 100. I mean, it was just like I couldn't breathe for literally, it seemed like a couple of minutes. And we went to the local hospital there on the Oregon coast, and they said I was bruised and had some bruised ribs. Excuse me. That night, I started throwing up blood. Mm. And Mom drove me back to Portland and went to the doctor. And the next thing I knew, I was at Emmanuel Hospital in Portland. And I just kind of have some fuzzy memories of being wheeled down the hallway in a gurney, not really sure exactly what was going on. Well, 12 weeks later, I woke up from a coma. 12 days later. I said 12 weeks. 12 days later, I woke up from a coma. And it followed right after, I believed when I woke up, it was right after I'd had this experience of having left my body. Near-death experience. I didn't realize that's what it was at the time. It was 1971, right? Later on, I realized what it was, and I didn't want to come back, but I was told I wasn't through yet. Well, whatever that means, right? So sure. I came back, I woke up, And it turns out that I had 60% of my liver had been removed, my gallbladder, cracked ribs, collapsed lung. I used 21 blood transfusions. And I was told at the time, or a little bit later on, my brother told me that the doctor said that I was the youngest person ever to survive with that much of their liver removed. So I was pretty banged up, right? And I had, about a year of recovery. I was in the hospital for about a month. The doctor wanted me to be at home rather than in the hospital. So he sent me home. And then for about 2 months, he would come to my house every single morning as part of his rounds. He would get there nice and early, but make sure that I was okay. I had some tubes, and he would do some drainage type stuff. I won't get too much in that gory detail today, but it was pretty gory, right? So that was at 12. So I started out with some low self-esteem, and especially after that accident, a lot of uncertainty about who I was and what I was doing. And, I started healing. I ended up playing Little League. I did pretty good in Little League. I wasn't the greatest player, but I made a couple of game-winning plays as a kid that I still remember and still say, wow, wasn't that great?
That's awesome.
So without making the story of the book too long, I then started, partying a little too much as a kid and as a teenager. And in hindsight, I reflect back on that and look at that as part of my way to compensate for not feeling good about myself, right? And when I was in that crowd, I was accepted by anybody. So it made me feel bigger than I was, and I hear that with other people that have had those struggles too, that it makes you feel bigger than what you really are. Well, again, making a long story short, at 27 years old, I almost had my legs cut off.
Wow.
I was having trouble walking. I ended up at OHSU in Portland, Oregon Health Sciences University. They told me I had vascular disease, and my right leg was 100% blocked, and my left leg was 65% blocked. And the doctor said, you're going to likely lose your legs. We need you to go into surgery right now. And I said, oh, no, you don't understand. I'm busy. I'll come back in a couple of days. So I came back in a couple, crazy, right? I came back a couple of days later. They did the surgery. I felt better. And then about it was actually 8 months later, they wanted to do the surgery again because my legs had reblocked. And I said, no, you're not going to do it. And they were pretty adamant about it. And so was I. I was in my 20s. I was pretty stubborn. I knew that I didn't want to have any more surgeries. So I left the hospital AMA against medical advice and went on down the road, not knowing what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where everything changed, where I started realizing that if I was going to live, which I wanted to live, that I was going to need to do something. I didn't want to keep having surgery every 8 months. I wanted to do something. I started walking. I couldn't walk very far. I mean, literally 10 feet, 20 feet. Couldn't walk.
Wow.
So, I mean, I was pretty, I was struggling a lot. I'd been a photographer. I was a great photographer at the time. And I ended up at a rehabilitation center in Santa Monica called the Pritikin Longevity Center. I was 27. Actually, I was 28 when I ended up there. And it's mostly for older people that weren't very healthy. And here I was. And at the time I was on a cane. I had went back to a cane and couldn't walk very far. And the doctor down there said, go out to the boardwalk. It was right on the Santa Monica boardwalk there. And he said, go out on the boardwalk, walk as long as you can until it hurts, sit down. get up, walk as long as you can, sit down, get up. And I started doing that. And within 2 weeks, I went from walking about 10 feet to walking 2 miles.
Wow.
And, what I was told is that, the body has an inherent ability to heal itself if we trigger that ability. If we trigger that awareness in our body, it will do it. My body was telling me I wasn't getting blood in my legs. So my body, in its own wisdom, in nature's own wisdom, started building new blood vessels, collateral blood vessels, which reinvigorated my legs with new blood. I was that guy, it was 1987. I was going to say 72. I was still thinking about the water skiing accident. It was 1987. And I'm walking down Santa Monica, and there's a lot of pretty ladies in their bikinis even back then and their rollerblades. And I was not going to be the weakling on the beach. I was going to stand tall. So I did everything I could, Michael, to get stronger and healthier. They fed me a plant-based diet there. They wanted to get rid of anything that could put blockages in my arteries. And I did my first yoga class. I'd never imagined I'd do this thing called yoga. I did my first yoga class. And I really liked it. I didn't know the power of yoga at that time either, but I really liked it. So do you want me to go on with the story, or?
Yeah, no, this is great. Yeah, because you started there with yoga, but you've now taken that to a whole nother level too, right? You're when I cyber stalked your profile, right? You're not only took yoga, but went on to not only become an expert in yoga, but a certified instructor that teaches other people how to teach yoga.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started doing yoga. I started feeling better. I went to work for a company in Portland. I was the assistant controller of this company called Great Performance. And they made health and wellness materials mostly for larger corporations and government, 1,000+ employee corporations. Sure. HR, human resource type programs, and started doing that. And the individual that owned the company made a deal with Times Mirror to sell them the company through a subsidiary called Mosby Yearbook, which was the largest publisher of medical textbooks in the world at the time. So he sold the company for $7 million. There was about 50 employees. I was assistant controller, and $7 million back in 1994 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's still a chunk of change. It's still some money. And he didn't give any of us any money. And I thought, even if he gave each of us $5,000 or, something for the work that we did, because I did a lot of work, in the meeting rooms with Mosby and everybody there, and helping put the deal together and everything else. And I got to be honest with you, Michael. I said, that SOB. Mm-hmm. I had, the stronger terminology, but that SOB didn't give us anything. Why should I sit in the back room of an office, help somebody make all this money and not get any? I've never worked for anybody since. Because once the transition happened, I saw the writing on the wall. The company was going to just get folded into Mosby. We were going to go away. So I put in my notice. Never turned back. Said you had a previous guest on that talked about never look back. And I mentioned to you before the show that a Maasai warrior chief told me that was the meaning of Maasai. Never look back, looking forward. And, I think the listeners, especially here on a tech show, I haven't talked much tech, but on a tech show, I can look back and think about DVDs and, some of the people might not even know what those things are anymore, or even cassette tapes. We're constantly looking forward. Everything's in the cloud. Up the street from where I live, 25 miles up the street, You got Facebook, you got Yahoo, you got Google, you got all these places up there where they're storing our cloud, all of our information. Maybe this podcast is going to end up there. I don't know. But it's all stored in
Awesome.
this thing called the cloud. Remarkable. So after I left that company, I started wearing suit and ties, custom made, tailored suit and ties, and I was doing a lot of finance. I was getting a lot of experience in that area. I was doing a little bird dogging, bringing some people in for some investors, mostly things like hotels in Hawaii. They were larger projects, normally over $50 million at the time. But I kept doing yoga. And again, my tailor-made suits, I was looking better than the bankers at the time, right? But I kept doing yoga. And I also was doing a lot of option trading. I'd made a lot of money in options. And I thought, well, I'm going to take a couple of years off. So I took a couple of years off, dived into yoga, thinking I was going to heal myself. And I did. That's a whole nother podcast, Michael. I won't go too far down that road, but I ended up teaching. I had no intention of being a teacher. I ended up with a couple of yoga studios. I ended up with a coaching consulting company for the business side of yoga. I made myself and some of my clients, we did conservatively about $40 million in sales with anywhere from a 20 to 40% net on that. So we did pretty good. We were pretty decent
Wow.
on that. And guess what?
Yeah.
Technology helped us.
That's awesome.
Understanding and implementing technology to attract, enroll, and retain our clients.
It's funny how technology weaves its way into industries or businesses. We just had a guest on late last week, and we were talking about she does FBA or Fulfilled by Amazon. She has a huge consulting practice around that, and she uses chatbots to do marketing essentially through Facebook Messenger. And I was just like, wait a minute. So it's hard to follow, right? Like you're selling your product on Amazon, but you're using chatbots on Facebook Messenger. Like it was just really cool to see. And it's cool to hear like yoga. I can't think of anything, any practice that's maybe just more still and more pure, and more tech not unfriendly, but doesn't really use tech, right? Than yoga, where you're just with yourself and you're just introspective, but yet you leverage technology from the business side of it, which is really cool.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I feel and I felt that was important, especially when I was constantly doing that work, was that part of the responsibility of the business owner was to make as much bloody money as they possibly could as a yoga studio.
Sure.
The reason being is if they did that, they were attracting more students and helping more people with their health and their fitness and their mindset and everything else. So, the money was nothing more than really an indicator of how well they were serving their clients, their customers.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a number of people say, thank you for giving me permission to make money. Right? So as a result of that, again, you're implementing technology. You got the CRMs. You're implementing sales funnels. You're implementing email sequences, all automated. Right? And so I began to look at the idea of technology. It's very easy to say technology controls us, and there's all the AI stuff, and how is technology going to control us more and more? Where I try to look at it as technology more as what tools can we use that technology provides to make our lives and other people's lives better.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always say technology empowers business. If you're in the business, right? If you have a yoga studio and maybe you enter into such a a venture with a very altruistic kind of approach and you really truly want to help people, the reality is if you don't make money to pay your bills and fund yourself, you're not going to be in business very long. So there comes the business piece. And if you're going to be in business, you might as well do that in the most efficient way possible, thus technology, right?
Yes.
So they kind of all complement each other. And I think so many people think about technology and they're afraid of it, or they're overwhelmed by it, or they think it's bad. There's a lot of media right now about the power of technology to know everything about us, and that's true. But that doesn't mean that it has to be used in a negative sense. And often ways it's used in a very positive sense and brings us ads that are relevant to us. And ads are just a thing of life. And I think we get so much bad press around ads. But to your point of marketing funnels, right? There's a studio that I go to called Yoga Pura. I'll give a shout out to Yoga Pura out on 7th in Moon Valley in Phoenix. They are fantastic. Their studio is amazing. When you step inside, you believe you've entered some temple. It is transformative. It is amazing. But they got me through a marketing funnel on technology through an ad. And it got me in there, and I found out about sleep yoga, which is amazing. I forget what the modality is called, but it was amazing, and it was everything I could do to not fall asleep during this yoga experience. But it's funny, and your entrepreneurial journey started so much earlier, right? Talk to me about like your first entrepreneurial thing, because I hear it has to do with blackberries.
Yeah, it does. And thank you for bringing that up. I grew up my dad was a middleman. He owned a bunch of gas stations. And, even as at a young age, he would talk about it. And I realized he was buying gas and then reselling it to people that needed it at a higher price, gas and oil, right? He ended up becoming the largest independent oil distributor in the state of Oregon. And then a lot happened after that as well. But he said, if you want to make a living in your life, find out what somebody wants and sell it to them, right? So we grew up west of Portland on a couple of acres of land, and we had blackberries. And I'd go out there, even as a little kid. And when I say little kid, 4, 5, 6 years old, and I would come home hands and face covered with blackberries. My hands and face, right?
Mm-hmm.
My mom said, have you been out eating blackberries again? I said, yeah. And one day she made a blackberry pie. Well, more than one day. She made the best blackberry pie in the world. And the neighbor kids would come over and want some of my mom's blackberry pie. Put some ice cream on top, some vanilla ice cream on top, and have some blackberry pie. And I asked my mom one day, I said, Mom, what do you think? I was 6 years old. What do you think if I go pick some blackberries and you bake a pie and I'll go sell it to somebody in the neighborhood? And she said, yeah, I'll do that under one condition. I said, what? She says, we split any money that comes in. And I said, okay. So sold the pie for $1. She got 50 cents. I got 50 cents. Well, before I knew it, everybody in the neighborhood wanted blackberry pies. So at 6 years old, I started becoming the blackberry entrepreneur, as I like to say. Here was a product that people wanted, and I was selling it to them, just like Dad would say, just like Dad would do. And so I realized that there was a lot of power in that, give people what they want. You can also add something to that, give them what they want, sell them what they need, which can be two different things, because we think we want something, but we really need something else, right?
Right.
So I even realized back then that they didn't just want the blackberries, They wanted to feel good. They wanted to have dessert after dinner and feel good about themselves and like share the meal or share the dessert with their family and friends. So that was important. So the quality of the pie, I had pretty down because mom was great at making pies, right? So I just had to go
Mm-hmm.
out there and sell. Now, do you want to buy a pie? And this is what the Girl Scouts do today too, is how many pies do you want?
Yeah.
So just like the Girl
Yeah.
Scouts, it's not, do you want to buy a box of cookies? How many boxes do you want? So
Changing the question.
I really learned about being an entrepreneur. And, I like a bit of history sometimes. And, for the story that I've seen about being an entrepreneur, it's been around since, sometime in the 18th century, where the king of Prussia instructions for his general says, if the country happens to not get what they want, you must agree with some entrepreneur to get what you want. And they considered it a go-between back then, that terminology. So an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur is really a go-between in that
I
thinking,
love it.
anyway.
Yeah, there's a story that's perhaps famous, right? If you think on the West Coast, somebody else who sold pies, right? But they created their own berries, so they cheated a little bit and they created the boysenberries. But the
Yep.
Knott's family started Knott's Berry Farm, right? It was they were just in yeah, everybody had migrated to California, and everybody was starting farms and kind of settling down, and they needed to find a way to make money, and they created this hybrid berry. But at the end of the day, it wasn't the berry that got him famous. It was Mrs. Knott's and her boysenberry pies, right? And then she
Yeah.
added fried chicken, and now there's an amusement park, right? But it's a very similar story, and they were a go-between. Hey, there's this wild bush that we created here called a boysenberry. What do we do with these things? Oh, let's put them in a pie. Everybody loves it, and off to the bank they ran, and the rest is history. It's a very interesting story because you were taught from a very young age and encouraged really to go on this entrepreneurial journey, and then you had an opportunity to do so. So right now, you've written a book. You're on this entrepreneurial journey. Um, you've helped other people start their journeys with the coaching for the yoga studio business. Um, like it's just such a cool swirl. You have endlessstages.com, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So you have a company right now, or a site that helps people share their message and get their story out there, right? And a lot of entrepreneurs write books. They write books about their product or their service or their experience or their journey. And I know a lot of them are like, how do we get our voice to be heard? So maybe talk to us just a little bit about Endless Stages and what that is.
I met somebody a few years ago through a mastermind group that I was in, somebody named Sean Tyler Foley. And he had grown up in the entertainment industry. He had been in movies like he was in the teenager and like Freddy versus Jason, and he was in Carrie and some of those movies. And he's still doing some acting here and there. But he had also had a lot of acting training. And we really hit it off when we met. And one of the things that we didn't talk about as far as the yoga was I also have trained about 7,000 teachers. And one of the
Wow.
things that I discovered that I was really good at in doing that was helping to bring people's power out of them to be able to speak in both small and large venues. And if I can give you a brief example of that, there was an individual, and I used to travel around and do some seminars and webinars, and this individual would come, and he was always in the back. And it turned out that he was a forensic psychiatrist for the federal prison system. And he would get into the minds of some fairly high-profile convicts that were mostly there for life because of the actions they had taken. Pretty nasty dudes, right? And he had been attacked a couple of times in that scenario. So I was running. Our programs were 9 weeks long. They were very intense, 6 days a week. We went down to the Fairmont Acapulco. We took over the Fairmont, essentially about half the hotel. We took it over. We had 350 students there. And who shows up but Ralph? So Ralph was quiet. He couldn't get up and talk. And so I said to Ralph, Ralph, let me ask you a question. He said, yeah. I said, do you ever talk to groups at the prison, the convicts, and speak to them? Oh, yeah, I do that all the time. And I said, do you ever talk to the staff about dealing with the prisoners and such? He says, yeah, I do it all the time. And I said, well, what if you pull out that same thing you already have and use it to talk about what you want to now? Literally overnight, he went from the kind of scared, fearful person about being afraid to speak because of some of his speaking experience where he had been attacked, to being really the life of the party, the life of the event. Everybody wanted to hear Ralph talk. And that's just one example of multiple examples of helping people get their voice out, so to speak. Right. And I realized that I was good at that. And I realized that everybody already has that power in them. And that energy that we often call stage fright or fear, if we just reshape that energy and say, this is the power I'm going to use for my presentation or my talk or my podcast or whatever it might be, people can shift really fast. Even to the sense of being a quantum leap. A quantum leap is really a change of state, and it can happen like that. Somebody blushes, you could call that a quantum leap. It's a change of state, instantly, an emotional change. So tapping into that power, like I said, I felt I was really good at that, and my partner Tyler is really good at really entertainment type frameworks of storytelling. He really grew up with that, as a young child, 6, 7 years old, beginning his acting career, and putting all that together. Now the two of us bringing that out and then using these frameworks to help people get their message out. And one of the things that we believe both of us do, that especially in today's world right now, there's so many voices that are literally being suppressed, and so many places where people aren't able to speak up. So on one side of things, we really want to get as many people out there talking as possible, talking about their experience. You might go talk about somebody, really connect. Your audience might really connect with them. Where I go out and talk to somebody else and they might really connect with me. We're all able to do that through the voices that we have and the message and the stories that we carry. Your stories and messages that you're carrying about the tech, and you bring these different people in, whether it's talking about Instagram or Twitter or mindset, you're presenting all this information and all this technology stuff, and you have a great skill in doing that. So we want to bring that same thing to other people. One of the things that we're doing right now is actually a podcast mastery challenge, as we call it. And we've hooked up with Podmatch, which I know that you work through.
I love it.
And we're with Alex at Podmatch. And Alex is going to be doing some additional trainings in our challenge. And right now, as of this moment today, 3 of the top 5 people on Podmatch are through Endless Stages. And we're working to actually take over the top 10 over the next 30 to 60 days. So every one of our members of Endless Stages will be in that top 10.
I love it. He does a good job of gamification,
Yeah.
right? When I analyze all these pod sites, right? And there's now, a lot of them out there. And Podmatch is, I use Podmatch. I use a couple others as well, but I'm primarily hanging out on Podmatch. They give you a ranking, right? And, you can be ranked as a host or you can be ranked as a guest. And I'm on both, right? I do some guesting on Podmatch and I do some hosting, obviously through Podmatch. And you'll get like, you're number 267. And you're like, what? I'm doing everything that this silly algorithm says, and I sent Alex a note and I said, dude, your algorithm is broken because I have, like 15 guests and I'm doing all the reviews and everything that you asked for. And I'm still like not up there. I'm like, whatever. It's just fun. And he's a great guy, him and his wife, who run Podmatch and contribute to the podcasting community so well. He had a great idea today, just to honor like people that podcast all the time, because podcasting, for those of you listening, is a bit of a thankless job. You generally never really know who is listening to you on what platform, and you're just putting your voice out into a black hole going, well, if it helps somebody, great, and if not, well, I had fun doing it. And I do it mostly for me because I get to meet people like Michael, who otherwise I might not have had a chance to connect with. But he's going to start kind of like YouTube awards for podcasts when they hit certain milestones. Like when you hit your 200th podcast, they're talking about you'll get an award or a plaque in recognition of being consistent. And 200 podcasts is a lot of podcasts. It's a lot of hours to put in, and it's a great milestone. And then when you hit 500, you'll get something else, similar to YouTube. And it's awesome. So it's really cool. I mean, you're channeling your skill set now to help folks out on endless stages. And there's a Facebook group and such. What is that community like? What happens out there?
Well, it's really a free community primarily for authors, coaches, experts, and entrepreneurs, kind of like the way we are, the way Tyler and I are. We're that, and we want to work with similar type people. So the Endless Stages Facebook group is we have a free training every Tuesday. We call it Tuesday Tips, and we cover some particular topic. It might be getting your message out. And Tyler wrote a book that's called The Power to Speak Naked. Right? And it's not really about speaking naked, right? It's the last thing that we want to do.
So we could be very limited places you could do that.
Right. Yeah. But they say, oh, imagine your audience naked. I don't want to do that. That's distract me, So we talk about how to address your audience in their clothes, because that's how most of us speak anyway, just like you said. The other way is fairly limited. So we touch on a lot of different speaking issues. We have some mindset work that we do. We're doing the podcasting challenge, and it's really That's focused. Awesome. We have a number of authors in there, and we're attracting more and more authors, which is really good. In helping people get their books out, what to say, how to say it. I've helped several people, promote their books. I had Jack Canfield help promote my book way back when my first book came out. Jack came along. Conrad Levinson, the father of Guerrilla Marketing, came along. And so, I've really have had some great experiences on delivering stories and delivering messages and delivering books. So coming back to Endless Stages, that's what we really want to do, is help as many people as possible get their message out to the world.
And you can just see your passion around that, right? Helping people tell their story. So many people are, I don't want to say afraid because that has such a negative connotation, right? But they're hesitant to either write a book or, is my opinion really valuable? Is what I have to say? Do I have enough credibility? Am I the one? I'm not the one. I'll just listen. I'll participate as a member of the community. I can't be up there. I can't be out in front. Do you have any help or guidance for those folks that, to get them to come forward and to take the stage? I just went to my son's graduation ceremony a year late at Harvey Mudd, and it's a great college. And the commencement speaker had a great message to the students, and she said, "It's your time. Not in the future is not your time. We don't need you when you're 25 or when you're 30 or later on in life. We need you right now. We need your voices. We need you to take the mic. We need you to use the mic, and we need you to drop the mic." And it was amazing. Everybody just kind of sat there, and it was such a great message to be like, let your voice be heard. The world needs people's voices now more than ever, perhaps. So maybe just some tips on folks that want to speak out, want to be on stage.
Yeah, great question. And I heard you say about the hesitancy part. And the hesitancy part is absolutely normal. My hesitancy, will people listen to my message? Will they want to hear my message? And, a lot of that is, again, my self-esteem that I've struggled with over the years and, early on growing up. And I don't remember who it was, but somebody said, that self-esteem, those issues are always going to be there. However, you can make something bigger. He said that something bigger is one person hearing your message, their life could change because of it. So even though over here, I may, have this self-doubt at times, this other idea is bigger than that self-doubt. So I allow that bigger idea to guide me. We all can get afraid getting on stage. We can all get afraid on a virtual seminar or something. It's normal. Mm-hmm. What are you going to allow to control you? This something smaller or something bigger? So when I allow that something bigger to control, I forget about that self-doubt. I forget about that self-esteem type issue. And I get out there, and it's like coming back to that power that we have, that nervousness is shifting that energy. Once I've made that decision, that energy shifts, and that power comes through our voice. It comes through our message.
I just love it, right? Someone like me, my wife jokes and she says, "You need more attention than anyone I know," right? And it's because I'm always like trying to participate, trying to contribute, trying to facilitate. I use humor in a fairly good way. I was sharing a story with my wife, me and a friend who I haven't seen in a very long time. Went to a bar together just to meet and catch up. And there was another gentleman there who has this great Hollywood past. And we were just having a beer and talking. We said, man, people are looking at us because we're having such a good time. We should give them a story to go along with it, right? So we said, let's find a 90s band that people will recognize but not really know who was ever in it. So it's very possible that we're the guys from the 90s band that were in it. And we said, Menudo. Let's tell everyone that we're the members of Menudo. Thankfully, nobody asked us to speak Spanish because we would have been very, very much in trouble with the story. But we told the bartenders and we said, hey, yeah, everyone's kind of checking us out. Just let them know we're just some of the members from Menudo getting together. And, and pretty soon we had a crowd around us. And everyone was like, oh, my gosh, and it was just this really cool. And she's like, oh, my gosh, you thrive on that. And I'm like, to me, I love the interaction, right? I get past the nervousness by just diving in and just making it playful and fun. And when you see me, if you pull up any of the conferences that I've spoken at, I'm always kind of like leading with a joke and such. And that's just how I try to like break it down and get everyone kind of chuckling and laughing, and it creates a bit of a friendly environment. And then I can go talk about boring things like technology or transformation. But, I think you just got to find that one thing that kind of works for you that lets you have your moment. And for me, it's humor and just making people feel good and making people laugh. Had we pulled off this joke in the bar and had it not worked, I would have been like, well, next time we'll be Boys to Men or something. And
Yeah.
maybe that pick the wrong band. Oh, well. But we had a great time. So I love I just love the humility with which you help people to try to give them a voice. Because I think right now, especially, everything that's happening in the world, everything that's happening in our country, right? We need everyone's voice to contribute to trying to help us figure a path forward.
Right. And like I heard you say a little bit ago, we need it now, not when you're 5 years from now. We need it now. That voice to get
out. Now is the moment. If you're going to write a book, now is the time. If you have an opportunity or want to speak about something, now is the time.
Which leads to something else that came up between us too, and that's the law of GOYA.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how many people out there are you familiar with the book The Secret?
I am, yes.
So there's a book out there called The Secret. My brother, Bill, actually helped Rhonda put that book together and is one of the authors of that book. And a lot of people throw rocks at the book. Oh, the law of attraction, and you get to sit around on your couch and, something's going to fall from heaven. Well, that's not the way it works. But there is one thing that makes that work, and that's the law of GOYA. And GOYA is get off your ass.
I love it.
So just like we were saying, we need this now. It's like, let's get up, get our messages out, get our stories out now. Not just keep sitting there thinking about it, but just do it.
I tell companies when I consult with them all the time, and they get paralyzed in strategy, and they're like, oh, we don't know. Should we do this? Should we do that? Should we do this? Should we do that? And I'm always like, I don't really care what you do, but you need to GOYA, right? You need to do something, and right, wrong, or indifferent, move down a path, and you'll very quickly figure out whether or not it's the right path. And then you can double back and go down the other path if indeed it's the wrong path. But not moving, especially for those of you in technology, or running a company or trying to provide leadership and guidance, stagnation is in this day and age, this digital age, is no bueno. It's not going to lead to anything good. You have to constantly be evolving and moving and getting off your rear end and providing direction, guidance, and input. The conversation's happening now, and hopefully through companies and ventures like Endless Stages, folks have a method of getting heard.
Yeah. If I could add one more thing to this idea of technology, it said, I love technology. I love it as a tool. It certainly makes life better in so many ways. And there are times where I cannot look at another computer. Can't look at my desktop, my laptop, my iPad, my iPhone, whatever it is. No more technology, nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And where I live in Central Oregon, and I'm close to the wilderness and the forests and the mountains. I leave everything at home and I go up into the mountains and I listen to the sounds of nature. I reconnect with the earth, so to speak, and just let everything go. And it reinvigorates me and it re-energizes me. And if I could give anything, especially to the tech crowd that may be listening here today, is to put your technology away sometimes. Go out into the woods, go into the ocean, go do something else other than just being encased in this bubble of technology. And you may find, or the listeners may find when they come back, they're better able to use those technology tools that they have.
I love it.
Yeah.
it's become such an ingrained part of us. I was doing some reading around the brain chip and kind of the embedded technology, and I was like, man, how do you? Because I do that. I step away from technology, especially when I'm with my family. I'll put my phone on a charger in a different room and take my watch off and just be present with them to try to participate as much as possible in that human interaction. And I'll find myself, doing the opposite of that. Like my wife will be in the living room, I'll be in the bedroom, and I'm texting my wife in the same house. And I'm like, I need to put that down, get up and just walk in the other room. What am I doing? How
Yeah.
lazy have I become? But, when we get those, like the brain chips and such, that'll be interesting. But for now, that refreshment that you get when you step away, it helps your eyesight for sure because you stare at all these screens and such, but just your soul to re-energize without all the bings and we were just talking before the podcast about all the bings and beeps and buzzes and vibrations and everything vying for your attention. Look at me
Yeah.
from technology. Wouldn't it be different if you watched a squirrel climb a tree or a bird fly overhead? I live in the city in Phoenix, and if we see a squirrel, we're like so amazed by, something so simple as a squirrel. We're like, look, there's a squirrel. Or we have some rabbits living in our backyard right now, which is really awesome. But we watch rabbits and we watch doves, and we're like, oh man. So just go be in wonderment of nature versus, the wonderment of Apple or Google or Samsung. For a little while. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, good reminders, Michael. I love your story, and I think it culminated in something that's just really cool. Helping other people be heard. It's a bit of a selfless endeavor to champion the voices of other people forward. And if you want to share your Blackberry Pie recipe, I'm happy to I'm happy to put that in my belly first, and then maybe in the comments if I feel like sharing it. But I took a picture. I was trying to pull it up on my phone. My wife and I, like I said, we're at Harvey Mudd for my son's commencement, and we took a picture at a Coco's, which is known for pie. It's a pie restaurant on the West Coast, and they had a sign that said "Welcome Pie Lovers." And I stood next to the sign. I had my hand on it, and I was like, "Yes, this is me. I am a pie lover. I self-admit being a pie lover." So all the talk about Blackberry Pie has me craving. So thank you for taking the time, Michael. Thanks for all you do. The links to connect with Michael will be down below for the endlessstages.com site, which takes you to the Facebook group that he mentioned.
Yeah. And thank you, Michael, for having a podcast and getting people's message out. I mean, it takes a lot of commitment to do what you do, and so it's greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you.